All right, hello everyone. So my apologies. This was supposed to be live. I did film a short 12-minute video for part one over in the live section. But I tried to film part two like two or three times, and my internet keep going down. So I'm just recording this on my computer, and then I'm gonna upload it separately. So sorry about this. I don't know if it's my internet or it's like a weird day. I don't know. So I'm just going to record this and upload it. So go back and watch part one in the live section. I'll definitely put notes on part one and then on part two so you guys know where to go. But I got cut off kind of talking about the way that I channeled this. So it came in through, I guess you could say it's kind of like trans channel. The way I was doing it at that time, the guides were speaking from me, and they are guides that I know, and that I have, lifetimes with and like a relationship with outside of, just me. But I wasn't like fully leaving my body and just allowing them to speak and type. So it's coming through and it's going to be told like a story from like their perspective, but it's also kind of coming through my own voice too. So I'm going to be reading it, and I'm going to kind of come in and out, and kind of talk about, okay, like here's what's channeled, here are my thoughts, I may channel more. I want to start off by saying the first part of the message is really like them talking to me specifically about like I know them and I remember them, we had lifetimes together. Not really like you guys necessarily. I mean, some of you might don't know them, but they're not saying like, oh, we know everyone here listening to this. That's not what they're saying. So I just wanted to preface that. But yeah, so let's get into it. All right, so here's the channeled message. Now, why is the city called Polaris, similar to the star? The answer is somewhat simple. There were two warring factions in the star system, and one had originations in the Polaris system and named this city after the star. Okay, so that's the first part of the channel message. I want to step in and say, like, this happening Orion, we know that the two warring factions were like the Orion Empire and then the Resistance, right? So we know that from galactic history. The other thing I want to talk about is that I thought this was weird that the city is called Polaris. And the reason that I knew like a message about Polaris was trying to come through is because I was traveling right before I channeled this message. So I was actually traveling like through the Northeast, and I kept seeing like places selling like Polaris, like where like not go-karts but like golf carts, and I kept seeing like Polaris, like I would be like watching a show and they'd have like a Polaris golf cart in it, so it kept coming up over and over again, and I was like, Polaris, like why, right? So it's like the universe was kind of sending me signals like, hey, we want you to channel some information. Here's about, here's what it's related to, here's what it's called, right? All right, so one second, let me get some water. All right, and then back to the channeled message. All right, so the city was not a bright place. A fog hung around the city, purple in nature, and while aesthetically beautiful, it was denser than the rest of the planet and hung around. It was put there by forces outside of our control. Who is us? Well, we are the beings bringing you this transmission. You may know us, you do know us, even if you don't subconsciously know us. We have spoken before in your dreams mainly and helped to bring some very important information to your attention. We wanted you to know right from wrong. This is why you kept dreaming of this place where we lived and played together. Like we told you before, we were there over and over again. We will not put a number on this, but know that, in Earth years, it is incomprehensible why you and us would continue to incarnate in this soul amnesia-driven planet. We were lost, completely lost. We thought we were human, or the equivalent of what we would consider to be an Earth human, and we didn't know any better. We spent a long time there, longer than you can imagine, and now we're back from outer space, here to tell the story of the city of Polaris. So I want to, kind of mention there that a lot of the references they had kind of given me up to this point, and they kind of gave me throughout, was from a TV show called The 100. And I don't know if you guys have ever remember that show or have ever seen it. Probably I think it finaleed like 2021. So, and it had 5 or 6 seasons. So it's probably about 10 years old or so. It was on the CW. And like, it was like kind of a futuristic, like post-apocalyptic show. And probably like the fourth, fifth season, there were some episodes where the bad guys, and I don't remember who the bad guys were exactly, but they were putting chips in like a lot of the main characters like heads, and they thought they were in this like beautiful city and just like living life like, you know, like way before any of the apocalyptic stuff happened, but really they were under mind control, and they were like used like to do the bad guys like dirty work, right? And they had no idea. They just were like living this like wonderful life, right? And so that's kind of the example, is like people in the city were like under some type of mind control where they like weren't really seeing what was going on. Now back to the channeled message. So this is the city of Polaris. The city was mighty, grand, and beautiful. Think big lights, flashy signs, cameras flashing everywhere when the celebrities and famous people were out and about. Yes, we had celebrities and famous people. Why? It's a long story. But basically things developed here on Polaris similar to Earth. There were many galactic beings there, as was common in the Orion star system, because, side note, Orion, you know, was kind of a melting pot of the galaxy, so there were all kinds of different ETs and aliens there, right? It wasn't just, you know, humans there or just one type of alien being. It was kind of, everyone kind of traveled there. Now back to the channeled message. And because all of this mixing of different star system cultures and beliefs, conflict would often occur. However, this gave room for other things to come through as well. One of those things was worship. Not necessarily worship like you would have in a religion, but worship of a person, of an idea. Worship of what they represented, because you wanted a piece of them. Whatever they are, you wanted to be a piece of it too. Imagine, you see a giant statue of some individuals when you enter the city of Polaris and Orion. You don't know who they are, but everyone else does. And the people there are in a haze. They think, oh, I should aspire to be like this. I should want this. I should want what others have, what I don't have. Does this sound familiar? If it does, it's because this initially happened on Orion and is playing out again on Earth. This need to have what you cannot. And with that came these celebrities that almost became like leaders of, you know, you might say similar to your fantasy and dystopian leaders, factions. Each of these celebrities, or almost mini gods, was leader of a faction, and each part of the city was designated into these faction territories. It is similar to the Divergent movie. In fact, that movie shows what happened in the end and the ultimate destroyer of the city, but that is not our focus now. And I'll say that I had just seen that movie, like probably like a month before I channeled this, and I saw it and I was like, that's Orion. That's what happened there. All right, back to the channeled message. Our focus on what the city was like prior to its downfall, before the mind control took over the city and left it the type of place where you could only incarnate as punishment or you cannot escape. That is why it feels like a memory now, and why we don't often fully incarnate when we go there now. The only current opportunity for incarnation feels grim there. It does not feel right, and for good reason. There are very few there that continue to incarnate into Polaris, and the few that do not enjoy it. They are there because they have been tied or tricked into being there, or because their soul has a contract that can only be cleared in the density of the planet. Similar to Earth, our karmic links there can keep us trapped in soul amnesia, and even now, there are still some souls trapped there. Okay, so I'm going to step in here. I actually had a client that part of her soul was trapped there, and we had to go during one of my Akashic clearing sessions, get it out, right? It was like a soul fragment from her incarnation in Polaris that was still there. So I have been there. All right. When the city was at its height, it was beautiful. The buildings would shine. They were in orange, gold, and purple. The buildings would literally sparkle. There were flowers everywhere, and there were even Andromedans in their purest form. So Andromedans are known for being like very beautiful. So just imagine these like beautiful aliens and like ETs everywhere. There were beings that were part dragon. They were similar to our alligator and crocodile humanoid friends, but had combined their genetics with something else, something far less dense and more beautiful. And I'll just step in there now, and I'll know that now that I've channeled the doll universe, which you can go back and watch that, there were dragon humanoid beings in the doll universe. So They were trying to create that here, it sounds like, but it was created more like non-organically, like kind of superficially, like in a lab with genetics. So probably as you know, as does happen sometimes, may not have been as beautiful as a natural creation, right? Or as seamless. All right. Everything was coded so beautifully. You really didn't know it wasn't paradise. It was kind of like being a human. You had multiple incarnations there and lived them out one by one, concerned about stuff happening on a day-by-day basis. Where were you going? What were you going to do after work? Would you go to a happy hour? Would you meet friends for drinks? And let me tell you about the nightclub life there. You think Vegas is something? Wait until you get to Polaris. Think of it as a galactic Vegas. Some of the most beautiful, model good-looking aliens in the universe. And the feeling when you were in the club was electric. Raw adrenaline was running through your veins. You felt you could escape. Because, see, there was a need to escape because none of this was reality. This is similar to Earth. What we saw and felt there felt real, and it was real in the moment, in our solid state of consciousness. All right, so I'll kind of jump in here. It's reminding me of the book, too, as I'm reading. I'm getting flashes of Crescent Moon, where it's like they had these like crazy like clubs and stuff like that, and they would kind of go and do eat different substances to escape. I was kind of seeing that, but there it was like they weren't all humans. Like they were all these different types of like beings, whether it's like werewolves or elves or like fairies and things like that, right? So kind of getting like the message that was like here as we were going through. So basically it's like you were in this soul amnesia, you couldn't remember who you are, like similar to Earth. It's like you have a job, you're working, you worship these like leaders of your city, of your group that you're in, and then you're just going out partying in these like crazy glamorous clubs and like, you know, just having like a mental escape while you're doing that. That's kind of the scene, right? Now back to the channeled message. So we had careers there. Many of us had flashy careers like going to fashion school or cooking school, again, because we wanted to be a celebrity like the leader of our faction. We did ourselves up with makeup and sparkles. We wore the trendiest clothes. The money economy there operated in jewels. Jewels you would have on you at all times, similar to Earth currency, but also digital jewels that you would spend through a watch, similar to like an Apple Watch or something like that. You could click your watch to pay the entrance fee into a club and go in. Honestly, a lot of things about Polaris were super, super fun. Here are some of the highlights. So there's a sport similar to golf, although it is often played by very feminine men and then women who wanted glory and fame. It was played on large courses that were covered in a pink salt and sand. You would bounce from one station to the next, everything glittering, and because this part was mainly an illusion because of the chips put into our heads, we thought we were flying. We felt light and less dense, like we would float and hop from one hole to the next. So that was interesting. Sounded kind of like Quidditch a little bit maybe, but then part of it was an illusion. So we're thinking these things are happening, we're thinking it's beautiful, but part of it's just a chip in our head, right? So sports were huge in Polaris. They are a way to keep us occupied, you see. The same tactic that is used to falsely divide people on Earth into categories or teams. This tactic was used on Polaris as well. The games were held high in the sky, similar to Quidditch in a way, but there was a lighter energy where people could float in between the different pillars in which you would score or throw a ball. No need for brooms here necessarily. People would float in giant bubbles/pods, whichever fit their unique alien DNA and body better. And they said Lyrans were always a bit heavier for some reason, probably because a lot of them were like giant feline humanoids, like, so think like a lion, you know, /human. Like that sounds heavy, right? So apparently here running was also a very competitive sport. There were big coliseums there where, similar to Earth's Olympics, people could compete. They would run, and you think that it was hard to put regulation around Earth's running population to make things fair. Think about different types of aliens who have different genetics, and some have more than 2 legs. So yeah, I don't know how you figure out the different classes of people competing and things like that. And then also, people would go to shows similar to the movies. It was not quite like going to the movies here, but very similar. It was a performance of sorts in which there were some live performers and some performers who hologrammed in, sometimes even from other planets in the Orion system, where the same level of mind control was going on. And so, what did this city look like? So I asked, did the city look like Chicago, right? Because that was like kind of the whole point of me going in and channeling this Larry was those dreams. And so they told me that it was very similarly laid out to the city of Chicago. So there was a great river on, as you would call it on Earth, the western part of the city. There were many bikers who rode along the road beside the water, and many people lived there as well. So these homes looked very similar to what you would call a hobbit hole, but much more advanced. They were basically homes carved out under the ground that were modeled after living quarter cells on spaceships, right? So basically, like, think of a spaceship and what that would look like. They kind of like, they look more, when we see them in movies and stuff, more like bare and like kind of like a dorm or something like that. They modeled them after that. They were quite basic in that way and did not leave a lot of room for things like decoration or excitement. They were smaller. Think a studio apartment or one bedroom. So, what kind of people would live here, you might ask? Well, people who were only here for a short time or people who had just arrived. See, this city in Polaris was oftentimes a place that you were sent. So you would stay here for some time and then move on to an upgraded dwelling. Often you lived alone in these spaces. They were not very large, but occasionally you would be assigned a companion in the space. They tried to keep similar alien races together, as each of these homes was coded for the unique DNA you would need if, say, you had antlers or fur or blue skin. This also meant that getting into these homes was very competitive, as there were only so many homes you could live that would affect your racial alien race specifications. Times in the homes were assigned and limited. You were just trying them out to see if Polaris would work for you. Because remember that Polaris was a limited reality, and while yes, you were physically there, not everything is what it seemed. See, it is hard to explain, but with these homes, they were an in-between and an entry point into the heart of the city. The real life that you would live in Polaris. It was part of the regulation regarding the city too with the Galactic Federation. You had to retain part of your consciousness while living in these homes and could not go fully into soul amnesia. You would then make the decision to truly be a part of this Polaris system and let your soul go fully in. You would have access to see how others acted in their soul amnesia. You have to give your consent, and you had a choice. This is very important because you have this on Earth, and like certain folks in Polaris, at some point you would forget that you had given consent. So basically it sounds like before you would go fully, into the soul amnesia and not remembering who you are and kind of go and live fully as a citizen of this city, you live in these like homes that were designated as like a trial period. And you'd like go partially into soul amnesia and you kind of get to see what it was like, and you'd be around people that were fully in soul amnesia. And then at the end you would consent to like fully going in and being, part of this city and part of this, I don't want to say experiment because it wasn't really an experiment, but where you would fully go into soul amnesia. And we'll talk a little bit about how they actually put you into soul amnesia in a second. But I think another good reference for this is and I think I talk about this later. I had also, like, all these movies that were related, I had just seen them, like, right before channeling, so they were bringing these examples up. But they made the book Uglies. They made a movie last fall on Netflix of it. And I actually read that book as a teenager, so I was very, very familiar with it. But it's basically this, like, procedure that they have done on people where, like, it's this future, like dystopian future film where like basically like you have the surgery and they fix all of your physical imperfections, so everyone is hot, everyone's beautiful, but you're under mind control, right? So it's like you kind of had to like consent to that procedure. I mean, in that movie, like not really, like all the kids kind of did it, they were brainwashed into wanting it, or like the people who like the brainwashing didn't work had to like run away. But this is like similar in that way, right? So anyway, I think we'll reference that movie more below. All right, back to the channel message. There were families on Polaris too. Families that came up for one reason or another and ended up staying similar to Earth. Some got stuck there, but some just like the existence. The experience of doing a lot, but not actually a lot. It can be addicting, and we see that on Earth often too. Scheduling your appointments, having a job where you schedule appointments, doing menial tasks. It was extremely easy to get stuck doing this on Polaris. So I think what they're saying here is that, like, you know how we'll get really stuck in the weeds and, like, you know, it's just like it all becomes about these like really small things and it takes up all our time and we don't, like, we can't focus on the bigger picture, see what's really happening. It's also kind of a part of mind control, right? It's like that was happening on Polaris, right? So we just kind of let these day-to-day tasks and things just completely overwhelm us and take over our lives. All right. The medical system on Polaris was an interesting one and had some similarities to Earth. It was hard to get in places, hard to find the care you need, and spiritual practices of healing, while widely known, were often not taken seriously. To the practitioners who called themselves specialists of the heart, of the mind, of the throat, these practitioners twisted spirituality. They made it seem like what they were saying were real and could play mind tricks. In reality, they wanted fame and power and, of course, a cash flow. So their medical system sounds very, very corrupt there on Polaris. Art did not really flourish in Polaris. Kind of makes sense. Yes, there was some art, but it had coded meanings behind it that trapped people in soul amnesia. It was part of why the planet was so dense and kept people down. The art felt similar to propaganda, again telling people that they needed this or that to be happy. You need a new face, a facelift, a surgery to make your butt look better. No matter your physical condition, you can always be so beautiful. Plastic surgery started on Polaris. This is especially pertinent in relation to the surgeries being performed to widen a person with hooded eyes. This is something that Polaris inhabitants were told was important to be beautiful, and a few of the practitioners have ceded this idea to planet Earth. So I want to talk about these things a little bit, right? So they're basically saying there wasn't like art there, which, like, this type of society that's like worshiping celebrities and things like that, and, like, you know, people aren't really able to use their creative expression, right? So they didn't really have art, and they just had like propaganda, which to me is like ads. It's like ads, you need this, you need that to make things better, right? So it's kind of like Earth's a little bit more balanced than that. Like, we do have a lot of ads and things like that, and sometimes it can feel like propaganda, right? But we also have a lot of people who are artists, and a lot of us do have an opportunity to creatively express ourselves through art. So I thought that was interesting. The other thing, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that surgery, but it's typically people of Asian descent. And I think it's much more popular in countries in Asia. Where I'm located in the United States, I don't know that many people get this surgery, and I don't know if it's popular anymore. But, like, for a long time, it was considered, like, not beautiful to have, like, the more, like, hooded eyes. And so people were, like, getting their eyes more opened, right? And so that actually started on Polaris, saying, like, this isn't good to have this eyes like this. We need to do these surgeries to open your eyes. And it's interesting because some of these practitioners who had performed that surgery have actually they're the ones who brought that idea to Earth. And that's why it became popular on Earth. So I thought that was really interesting. All right, back to the channeled message. Women or female aliens were told that their bodies had to look a certain way and that they had to have surgeries to correct how they appeared naturally. Also feels like something that's been brought to Earth. The intent behind this was for everyone to remain the same so that they could stay in a lost and robotic state and be used for whatever purpose the higher powers at be had for us. We did not like it, but we stayed, and many stayed because of the addictive feeling of changing ourselves, slowing our aging, making ourselves prettier, So this is where we're going to talk about the Uglies book. The impetus for the movie and book The Uglies was based on this time in Polaris as well. Trade your brain, free will, and thoughts for a perfect body. Lose your mind and win your shine. There were corny slogans like this in Polaris that would actually work over and over and over again. They could not be stopped, for once they got into the code of the planet, they would multiply like weeds. They were everywhere, and people thought that the most important thing was looking like an angel, a model, something or someone that doesn't exist. So very superficial society as well, right? Like once you kind of got trapped in it, it's like you didn't care about the important things. All you cared about was like how you look and how much fun you could have, and then, being successful and just making sure you're doing all this stuff every day, right? So back to the channel message. So we got caught up on changing our faces, and darker forces did things in the background. They distracted us with always having a new and hottest things to introduce us to. Ways to spend our digital jewels, new activities on the weekend, and some of it was actually pretty creative. Fun excursions for you and the kids, or all your family and friends. The thing about being on Polaris that it was cool, but only if you really blocked yourself off from what was going on in the end. The planet was being destroyed. We were being destroyed. Our bodies and souls were being sucked for life force energy, drained, and the more we were asleep, the more we wouldn't notice. So it's kind of like, it was really cool to be there, but it's like, it's kind of a ruse to keep you from realizing what's really going on. Now, some of you may have gone to Polaris in your dreams, and it feels very dark. This is the soul's recognition of what it actually looked like on the energetic level in other realms. Okay, so that's interesting. So if you're there in your dreams, for me, it didn't look like that way. It was cool, right? It was like I was back in the person that I was living their experience. I was in the soul amnesia. But some of you may actually be able to go and see what it really looks like, right? Similar to Earth, you would put on rose-colored glasses when you arrived on Polaris. This is why the city is so beautiful. Everyone was given a tour and shown the full results of what happens when you enter Polaris, the soul amnesia that occurs, and how it makes people think and act. Looking at it objectively, why would anyone give up their freedom and ability to free think and let themselves undergo a mind-numbing procedure to be beautiful, live in a beautiful city, and forget who they really are? This is because things were so bad on other planets. See, there were criteria to enter Polaris, and not everyone could come here. The criteria were as follows. You had to have already incarnated multiple times. You could not be the first-time soul in a body there. You had to have a certain amount of karma accrued to even enter the test phase, the phase where you lived in the hobbit holes by the river. You had to be willing to be part of the experiment and risk your life. See, because there was something inserted into you as part of this. Mind control, obviously, but something deeper than that. A liquid you drank to constantly stay in a state of sleep and soul amnesia. Okay, so they did it via liquid, which is so interesting. You don't see that in a lot of like sci-fi and stuff. Like I haven't seen a lot of like movies where like you're drinking something and you're forgetting. It's always like the chip in your head, right? So this was bright yellow and addictive. It was sold in vending machines across the city at the grocery store, everywhere you would look. So think like it's sold like sodas. Like everywhere you go, there's these vending machines, and they're full of this stuff. It was so good, and no one thought twice about drinking it. The creators of Polaris were able to get around disclosing what it fully was because the way the drink was presented to you. They told the truth of it in a backhanded way. Many thought they were joking. And it's interesting because I feel like the truth kind of comes out like that here on Earth too. But when you began drinking it, you slowly began to see a different reality. Your perception changed bit by bit, and you began to forget who you really were. This is when they had you. They would joke the first time you drank it and say, well, this will control your mind and make you slowly forget that this is not your reality, and then pretend it was just a joke. So they were literally disclosing what would happen and just like making it into a joke, which like I feel like that's what kind of happens with like movies and things like that. You know, it's like, oh, this isn't real, but like really it is real, right? Like the things happening in movies. All right. The other criteria would be that you cannot contact anyone on the outside. Once you're in, and you no longer have any reason or want to remember your people from before. This was hard for those of us who chose not to go to Polaris and to stay behind. Many lost mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, and friends. Once you go to Polaris, there is a brief window after you've completed your trial period where you are allowed to decide if you want to stay or not. If you do leave, the effects of this golden yellow drink will eventually wear off, but it takes time and often not a year or so until after you've left Polaris. So the drink would wear off if you stop drinking it, you leave, but if you stay and you keep drinking it, like, it just keeps with the mind control. There were also soul contracts signed related to Polaris. Some souls contracted to go there for no good reason, other than they wanted a physical experience on Orion. We call these souls naive. Okay, that's their words. And unfortunately, many of them are still trapped there. So yeah, that would be pretty, I would agree with them actually. That's pretty naive if you just want to go have an experience. And I get it because, yeah, you want to know what it's like to be under mind control, right? And I get it. Like, it's an interesting thought, right? But what they're saying is that many of them are still trapped there as Polaris still exists in some timelines. So, and I have gone there and I have seen, the people trapped there. So, well, they're not really people, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Others contracted in as payment and retribution for their actions in other lives, and some ended there because they wondered if they could pull themselves out of soul amnesia, or because they wanted to prove themselves that they could. So, imagine being a soul and you're like, okay, there's this like place, this city where these people can't pull themselves out of their soul amnesia, but I want to see if I can do it. And it's like a challenge. It's like, you want to know, like, can I pull myself out of soul amnesia? And that's why a lot of souls like ended up going there. So back to the channeled message. Whatever the reasons, the gate to Polaris were guarded by soldiers with alligator people, dinosaur souls, and other nefarious star races. Everyone who went in and out of Polaris was scanned. The amount of information regarding the comings and goings from the city is immense. So tight records over everyone going in and out of the city. In Earth years, the city lasted about 500 years or so, maybe closer to 700, but because there are also multiple timelines converging, it is difficult to truly give an accurate number. People did eventually claw their way out, and many of these are freedom fighters now on Earth and beyond. There is an agenda to usher in the next age of Polaris, the next iteration of the city, and to continue with the mind control. But many, many, many are working against this, and right now efforts have been successful in stopping this. The airway over Polaris is currently controlled by dark galactic forces, and they monitor when light beings come in and out, and it is interesting because we were able to get in and out quite quickly. So, coming back to me, I go there quite a bit, partially to free myself from my past life connections holding me back there, and also to, stop these ties to my current life, but also to help give liberation to the souls that are currently trapped there, to help them find their way back to the light. So that's something I typed out a long time ago. We've already kind of talked about some of that stuff. Although not incarnated, many of these souls are now trapped in bodies under the floor in Polaris, where the bodies have a chip in them that is playing out what is happening in Polaris for those 500, 700 years. They can't get out. They think that they are living this life that they are not, and they are basically in a stupor and asleep, thinking that reality is not reality. Okay, so that's the thing, is that, and we'll talk about what happened, but a lot of these soul fragments that were there incarnated, they're still trapped in there, either like in bodies or other ways. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But they're still there, and they're like, now they are referencing using a chip. Before it was a liquid, right? But I guess because it's like an unconscious body or something, they can't use liquid, so they use the chip at this point, and they're just kind of like living out this life, like they're like dreaming of being in this like life in this beautiful city, but they're like just trapped like underground. Okay, so here's back to the channel message. In Earth numbers, there are close to 3,000 million, which I believe is 3 billion people, or I think it's more accurate to say like souls or soul fragments trapped in these stupors. Several of these folks have concurrent incarnations on Earth and feel the weight and the pull of their Polaris self pulling at them. They did not get out of Polaris in time before the gates closed, and all that were inside were transferred below. Over time, their initial bodies disintegrated, but their consciousness was retained in other containers. We will not go much further here, but we will say that this is not a pleasant container for a soul. And while some of these folks that have current incarnations may access them through the Akashic records, it is not recommended to do so, as the protection, as they would call it, was put around them. What is really an energetic gunk that traps the soul inside and is very, very hard to break. So it's interesting, right? So basically they're saying there's like these containers because these soul fragments were in bodies, but eventually, like any planet, the body is going to expire. So they've kind of transferred them into these other containers, right? And I actually, when I went in with my client, her soul fragment was actually in another body. So I don't know if it was the original body just was still lasting or if it was put into another body. But when we went in, like they literally were like, it was a big deal. Like, we have protection up now. We can only be here for a short time. You need to begin. They gave instructions on her what to do. Like, she was like having to do stuff. It's like I was doing all this light language and Reiki and like freeing the soul from that. So it is like, it's not recommended to go there, but it's like limited cases where you can go and do that, right? And this stuff is like, it's always so weird and so dark. We talk about it. It's like literally stuff you would hear in like a sci-fi movie or something that you're like, I can't believe this really exists, but it's weird to think about it, but it does, right? All right, so we're going to go into how the city of Polaris fell. So how did the city of Polaris fall? It was partially the mind control, partially the need to become something that you are not, but enough attention from other planetary systems was drawn to Polaris. Enough friends and families had disappeared there that galactic energy was sent to strike the city. Of course, internally, this was thought to be some type of attack, and people, and I can't say the real word because of censorship, but maybe explosion or something like that. And people went underground. This is where the dystopian society occurred for about 30 years or so before the consciousness transfers got out. There were a few survivors, those who saw the galactic energies and ran towards them rather than away from them. The body that they were in did not survive, but the frequencies sent from other star systems would release the soul from the body and put it into a holding tube until it could be processed back at the home base of its origin or recent incarnation. Karma from those lifetimes is often now processed here on planet Earth for those individuals who ran towards the light. Okay, so what happened is that like enough word got out about Polaris that basically like other ET said, we're going to come in and we're going to free this city because this is not allowed to happen. And so what happened is they were sending like light waves and frequencies and like just different things down to the planet. And they thought they were under attack, right? And these people are in mind control. So like they don't know what's going on. So a lot of them just went underground. And those are the people that are still trapped there. But if you ran towards the light, like if you knew enough to run towards the light, like you would go, your body wouldn't survive, but your soul would like leave and could be processed. So it's not trapped underground now where a lot of these soul fragments are trapped. Again, this is super dark. It's weird to talk about, but this is what I channeled, right? So many of us have soul wounds from our time on Polaris, and many come to Earth to prove to themselves that they can handle the soul amnesia here. It is not always fun, but it is a way to remove our karmic links from our time on Polaris. So basically, Earth is like a place that you're also under soul amnesia, so you can kind of work through some of that karma stuff surrounding, your soul amnesia here on Earth. So the next thing that came through is, why is this information coming through now? So this is a channeled message. For many of you hearing this, a part of your soul needs to understand why things on Earth feel so similar, but yet so foreign. Know that while Earth may feel like the worst planet ever, it has not always been thought to be so, and we are here to remove our energetic attachment to Polaris through our Earth lives, where we come in on soul amnesia and have the opportunity to buy into ideas that keep us in denser frequencies. But we are now beginning to choose not to choose instead to have an awakened life on another planet that is similar to Polaris, but distinctively different as well. We don't have the same level of mind control here yet because the things that we are consuming have not risen to the level of substances on Polaris. They were much stronger, you see, much denser in comparison to our current bodies on that planet. Here, because our bodies are so dense, the ratio of denseness is more similar, and therefore we do not fall prey as quickly and easily. We cut our ties to Polaris by awakening here on Earth and frankly knowing better. Seeing past lives and deception and embracing who we are on the inside, our inner beauty, instead of a manufactured version of it. So, let me read that last part again. Seeing past lies and deceptions and embracing who we are on the inside, our inner beauty, instead of a manufactured version of it, right? So basically saying, like, on Earth we can clear the karma from Polaris because it's similar society. We're not under complete mind control like we were there, so we can kind of clear and, like, do things and, like, think things, like, differently, right? All right, we also embrace our inner strength and know that our intuition and inner light are not able to be dimmed and hammered out like the creators of Polaris would have us to believe. No, we are stronger than they think. We are back on our feet, and now we live without them in our heads, controlling our bodies and minds. Pretty powerful. So then I asked the question, so why is the city of Chicago so similar to Polaris? Because I'm like, okay, like, why does Chicago resemble the city so much? And this is the answer, and I thought it was interesting. It was not anyone's intention to create a city so similar to Polaris here on planet Earth. It happened by accident. One day, an energy came to Earth that had been greatly affected by its time on Polaris. It remembered it so strikingly, and it laid an imprint on the part of the planet where the city of Chicago now lies. This energy has had multiple incarnations in Polaris and was visiting the Earth in spirit form, making a decision on whether it would incarnate on Earth or not. It left so much of its energy from Polaris there that this energy acted as a beacon for more souls from Polaris to follow. That's interesting. So basically, like, the soul came down and it remembered the city, and it left an imprint of the city there, which kind of, like, was like a beacon for more souls to follow. And then all those souls just, like, left these imprints here that sounds like kind of, like, naturally developed based off of the things that happen on Earth, based that, like, energetic imprint, right? So it wasn't necessarily, like, planned to be that way, but it kind of happened organically. All right, back to the channel message. Because the thing about Polaris is that the glamorous part of the city, the beautiful buildings and nightclubs, many who were there, almost all, yearn for that euphoric feeling you would get in the city when you incarnated there as a soul. It felt like paradise, and we want to feel that way, especially if we are physically incarnated in a human body. So when that first initial imprint of Polaris was left, it was a magnet for other souls to get there, and slowly, bit by bit, a tiny replica of Polaris was obstructed. The city of our dreams was again born on planet Earth. Wow. Now, keep in mind that the beautiful version of Polaris was never really 100% accurate, because keep in mind that the city appeared differently than it really was because of all the gases in the air and the yellow liquid. It was much less beautiful in reality, but the souls trapped there could absolutely not tell. And that's what we yearn for, that feeling of being in a perfect paradise again, when actuality, that place never existed. It only existed because we were tricked and showed a different viewing of reality. So we are craving something that never existed and we never really had. And this is interesting to me, and it really tracks because I really wanted to move to Chicago so badly, and I loved living there, and it was really hard for me to leave. So I think it was that soul remembrance of Polaris that really tied me to that city and, like, really wanting to be there very badly. And I think that's why, I've been, the one, or I mean, I don't know if other people have channeled this too. I haven't heard it, but as far as I know, the only person who's channeled it, because my experience, that yearning to be in that, like, environment again, right? Even though it wasn't real, it was always mind control. Like, it just feels so euphoric. You want to get back to it, So this is the guys that I channeled from leaving this message. So this is where we will leave you, our friends. This is a tale of Polaris and why there is a tiny replica here on planet Earth. If you have listened to this point, we hope that this knowledge has unlocked something in you, or at least filled you with intrigue, and as always, you would not be hearing this information in divine timing if you were not meant to hear. So take this information and do with it what you will. This was channeled by a group of Lyrans who care about the city of Polaris because of all our dear souls that we lost there for some time, many of who are still stuck there. Love, love, love. All right. So that concludes the originally channeled message. It was our Lyrans who came through, which I work with the Lyrans a lot. I have a very big connection to Lyran. I'm pretty much a Lyran starseed, even though I call myself an Andromeda and starseed. But yeah, so what did you guys think? It's an interesting story, right? And we have a lot of books and movies here that have similar plot lines and kind of show us what it was like. Um, but if any of you feel like that resonates with you and you're like, I could have been there, I mean, definitely reach out to me. Let's talk about it. Let's see if maybe you're interested in a soul origin and life purpose reading where we'll go through like, were you in Polaris? Like, why were you there? What happened to you there? Like, is a part of your soul fragment still there? I don't know. So, definitely a lot of food for thought. I hope you guys really enjoyed that live channeled message. Also, sorry it couldn't be in one video. It's so annoying. It's so annoying with technology and things like that, but got it on here, got the message out. And so, yeah, I can't wait for the next time to channel for you guys, hopefully live. We'll see. I got to figure out the format after this. And I had this happen on another one of my lives, but yeah, we'll figure it out. But yes, definitely my free meditation, if you're interested in that and activating your third eye, opening up your psychic abilities, maybe during that meditation, you would remember your lifetimes on Polaris. That's below. And then also, if you are interested in booking a soul origin and life purpose, that link is below as well. But I have so many different types of sessions as well. So definitely check out my full list of sessions. I'll also link that below. And don't forget to subscribe. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and goodbye.